She's crying at her own wedding." The little flower girl whispered those words, loud enough for half the guests to hear. But nobody moved. Nobody cared. Because Ruth's tears weren't tears of joy. They were silent screams no one dared to notice. The church was decorated like a scene from a magazine. White roses, gold ribbons, chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. Everything looked perfect, but nothing felt real. Ruth stood at the altar, wearing a borrowed wedding dress that was slightly too tight. It had been stitched at the waist that morning. She wore second-hand shoes and makeup done by a neighbor who once worked in a salon. Her hands trembled, her lips quivered. She looked beautiful, but she felt like a statue waiting to crack. Daniel stood beside her, handsome in his expensive suit, smiling for the camera, waving at his rich friends. But his smile never reached his eyes, and not once did he look at Ruth. Behind him sat Mama Doris, Daniel's mother, fanning herself like a queen. Her face was hard like stone, and her eyes were sharp like knives. She wore red lace and coral beads that screamed money. She didn't smile either. In fact, she never even looked at Ruth. At the very back row of the church, almost outside the building, sat Joel, Ruth's only family, her younger brother. He wore a clean white shirt, but the collar was torn. He held a tiny gift bag in his hands and kept his head down, afraid to be noticed. Daniel had made it clear. "I don't want that boy near me. He's a shame. If he comes close, I'll walk out." So Joel sat alone, trying not to cry. The pastor spoke. "Do you, Daniel, take this woman, Ruth?" "I do." Daniel's voice came quick, cold, like reading a line from a movie script. "And you, Ruth?" There was a long pause. The silence was heavy. Ruth tried to speak, but her lips refused. Her heart was screaming, "No, run, this is a trap!" But her mouth whispered, I do." The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. A new bride and groom, a perfect Nigerian wedding. But if you looked closely, you'd see the truth. It wasn't a celebration, it was a funeral with flowers. After the ceremony, Ruth sat in the corner of the reception hall. She wasn't smiling, not even fake smiling. Daniel was surrounded by his friends, laughing, drinking, posting on Instagram. He looked like a celebrity. He had everything. But none of them came near Ruth. They looked at her like she was invisible. Mama Doris finally walked up to her. Not to say welcome or congratulations. No. She leaned close and whispered, "You better behave yourself in my son's house. This isn't your father's compound." Then she smiled and walked away before Ruth could speak. Joel watched it all from afar. He wanted to run to her, but he knew if he did, Daniel would make life even harder for his sister, and Joel had just started university on a small scholarship. He couldn't risk it. Ruth looked at Joel and gave a tiny nod. Her eyes said, "Don't worry. I'll survive. Just don't leave me." That night, they didn't go on a honeymoon. Daniel took her to his house, a duplex with tiles that shined like mirrors. He showed her the kitchen, the bedroom, the guest room. Then he said, "Make sure this house is clean. My friends come often." Ruth looked at him. "Are we not going to talk? About today?" He turned to her. "What's there to talk about? You wanted marriage. You have it now." From that day, Ruth became a ghost in her own marriage. Daniel would go out for days, come back drunk, and never ask how she was doing. He never touched her with love, only with coldness, like she was a thing he owned. He would laugh with his friends in the living room and call her out. "Ruth, bring drinks for my boys. Ruth, clean this place. You're the maid here." They would laugh. One even asked once, "Is she your wife or your cleaner?" Daniel replied, "Both, same thing." Ruth's hands would shake as she served them, but she never said a word. She just prayed in her heart, God, please don't let me break in front of them. Every week Joel would send her small messages, a Bible verse, a joke, or just, how are you today, big sis? Ruth would lock herself in the bathroom and cry, reading those texts. One day she visited Joel near his school. Daniel didn't know. They sat on a bench, eating puff-puff, laughing like old times. Joel said, "You still laugh like Mama." That one line broke her. She wept in his arms like a baby. She said, "Joel, this marriage is like a cage. I can't breathe inside it." Joel held her hands and whispered, "Then come out. Please, Ruth, come out." But Ruth shook her head. "He said if I ever visit you again, he'll stop your school fees. He'll even chase you out of your hostel." Joel's face went pale. He didn't speak. He just nodded, slowly. That night Ruth went home and wrote in her notebook, "I'm not a wife. I'm a prisoner. But I'll keep smiling for Joel. I'll carry this pain like a cross." One night, Daniel came home drunk. Ruth had prepared food, cleaned the whole house, even ironed his clothes. He entered and said, "Who are you with today?" Ruth blinked. "I was home all day." Daniel shouted, "Liar! I saw a guy send you money. Who is he, your boyfriend?" Ruth tried to explain. It was Joel, but before she could speak, slap! Her head turned, her cheek burned. She touched her face, shocked. Daniel pointed at her. "Next time you lie to me, I'll kill you." Ruth walked to the bedroom. Slowly. She didn't cry. She sat on the bed. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Today my soul died. But one day I will rise again." The next morning after the slap, Ruth wore a scarf to cover the bruise on her face. Her eyes were swollen, but she told the gatekeeper it was pepper in the eye. She went to Mama Doris's house, hoping, just hoping, the woman would at least pretend to care. She thought, maybe if I open up to her, she'll talk to Daniel. Maybe she'll defend me. I'm still her son's wife, right? She knocked. The gate opened. Ruth walked in like someone entering a lion's den. Mama Doris sat in her sitting room, drinking tea with her friends. Big lace wrapper, heavy gold bangles, eyes like steel. When she saw Ruth, she sighed loudly. "Hope you're not here to bring bad luck?" Ruth knelt gently. "Good afternoon, Ma." Mama Doris didn't respond. She just took a sip of her tea and waved her hand, dismissing her friends like a queen sending away servants. They left, whispering. One of them giggled. Ruth sat on the edge of the cushion. Silence. Then she opened her mouth and said the one sentence she had been afraid to say. "Ma, Daniel hit me last night." Mama Doris raised her eyebrow. "And so?" Ruth blinked. "He slapped me." "For something I didn't do." Mama Doris leaned back and smiled. That type of smile that isn't warm. It's cold like ice, sharp like blade. "Did you open your mouth too much, or were you giving him reason to doubt you?" "No, Ma, I was quiet." "Then maybe you were too quiet. A man can slap you for silence, too." Ruth's jaw dropped. "Ma, I came to you because I need help." Mama Doris dropped her tea. "Listen to me, girl. Do you think marriage is sweet all the time? You want to carry small slap on your head like trophy? My husband used to beat me like drum. Did I die?" Ruth's voice shook. "But that's not love." Mama Doris laughed. "Love? Love doesn't cook soup. Love doesn't buy land, my dear. Suffer in silence. That's what women do." Ruth's hands began to shake. She stood up slowly. "Ma, with all respect, suffering is not strength." That sentence made the whole room go cold. Mama Doris's face turned dark. She stood up. "Get out!" Ruth stepped back. "Get out of my house before I show you the kind of madness you've never seen." Ruth ran. 2 days later, Ruth got home to find her clothes on the floor, not in the bedroom, in the parlor. Daniel had emptied her wardrobe, every single wrapper, shoe, blouse dumped like trash. She picked them up, confused. Why are my clothes? Daniel stood at the top of the stairs with his phone in his hand. My mum told me you insulted her. I didn't. Shut up! He walked down slowly, like a predator. From now on, don't step in that room again. You'll sleep in the maid's quarters. Ruth gasped. What did I do? Daniel grabbed her arm, dragged her across the house and shoved her into a small dusty room behind the kitchen. This is where you belong. He slammed the door. Ruth stood in the room, surrounded by cobwebs. No fan, no window, just a small foam on the floor. She sat down. She covered her mouth. And she screamed! But no sound came out. That night, she lit a small candle and opened her notebook. She wrote, "Today, I stopped being a wife. Today, I became nothing. But if pain is power, then I am stronger than any queen." She cried until the candle melted into the floor. The next week, Joel called. She couldn't say much. Daniel had started checking her phone. She only said, "I'm fine," Joel replied. "You're lying." Ruth smiled through tears. Joel said, "Sis, no matter how long you stay there, I'll always wait for you. But please, don't let that house become your coffin." Then he hung up. Ruth held the phone like it was gold. One Friday evening, Daniel came home with another woman. Her name was Bianca. She had long eyelashes and fake American accent. She looked at Ruth and said, "Is this your maid?" Daniel laughed. "Yeah, she cooks and cleans. You don't need to talk to her." Ruth stood there, shaking. Daniel said, "Don't just stand there. Cook something special for my babe." Ruth stared at him. For the first time, she said, "No." Daniel looked up. "What did you just say?" "I said, I will not cook for your girlfriend." Without warning, slap. Again. But this time, Ruth didn't cry. She touched her face, looked at him, and said, "That was the last time." She walked into her small room, picked her box, walked past Bianca, past Daniel, past everything, and out the door. Ruth didn't carry much. Just a nylon bag with her notebook, 2 wrappers and a broken phone. She didn't know where she was going at first. Her legs just moved. Her mind was blank. The street lights were coming on. The sky was turning grey. The wind smelled like fried plantain from a roadside woman's tray. She had no money for transport, so she walked and walked and walked. Each step hurt, but it was the sweetest pain she had ever felt, because this time she wasn't walking to serve someone, she was walking away from hell. It was almost 9 p.m. when she reached Joel's small student apartment. She stood at the door, unsure if she should knock. Her dress was stained with sweat and dust. Her hair was rough. What if he doesn't want her here? What if Daniel already poisoned his mind? But before she could raise her hand, the door opened. Joel stood there, holding a spoon of Ghanian ground nut. He froze. His eyes widened. The spoon dropped. "Ruth?" She nodded, then collapsed into his arms. Joel pulled her inside like a lifeline. The room was small. Just one bed, a fan, 1 plastic chair, and a small table. But it was the warmest place Ruth had ever been. He made her sit. He brought water. She drank like a woman from the desert. He didn't ask questions yet. He just let her cry. Later, as she wiped her face with his old t-shirt, she said in a low voice, "I left." Joel nodded. "Good. I don't have money. I don't have clothes. I don't even know what will happen next." Joel looked at her. "But you have peace now?" She nodded. "Then that's more than gold." That night they ate Gary together. Ruth laughed a little when Joel dropped his spoon again. He said he was clumsy, but really, he was too happy to see her smile. Before sleeping, Joel brought out a small frame from his drawer. It was a photo of them as children, Ruth in a green dress, Joel missing his front teeth. "You remember this day?" he asked. "Of course. Mama bought Puff Puff for us that day," she said. "No matter how small we are, love can make us grow big." Ruth smiled. "Mama always had the right words." Joel looked serious now. "I know, I'm just a student. I don't have much, but Ruth, I swear, I'll never let you go through that kind of pain again." She held his hand tight. "And I promise not to give up on myself again." The next day, Ruth took her tiny savings, some money she had been hiding in her notebook cover, N3,200. She went to Yaba Market with Joel and bought 3 plain t-shirts, a few pieces of fabric, needles and thread. "What are you planning?" Joel asked. Ruth smiled. "I used to sew when I was small. If I can sew well again, maybe I can sell." Joel looked at the bag of materials like it was a box of diamonds. "Let's start something," she whispered. "Let's build something." That night, she hand-sewed her first shirt, using thread and hope. Joel wore it the next day like it was Gucci. One of Joel's classmates, a girl named Vera, saw the shirt. "Where did you get this top?" she asked. "My sister made it," Joel said proudly. "Can she sew for me too?" Joel texted Ruth. That evening, Vera came by. Ruth took her measurements. The next day, she made a purple crop top. When Vera wore it to class, 2 more people asked for Ruth's number. Ruth wrote it down on paper. Her phone was still broken, but she was smiling now. Something was happening. Joel said, "You need a name for your brand." "Brandke," Ruth laughed. "Yes, na, it's not just sewing, you're building a life." They sat on the balcony. Ruth looked at the stars. "What if we call it Threads of Joy?" Joel looked at her. "That's perfect, because you found joy, thread by thread." 2 weeks later, Joel told his boss about Ruth. Mr. Adams was a hotel owner. He liked Joel because of his honesty and hard work. Joel showed him one of the shirts Ruth made. Mr. Adams said, "Who made this?" "My sister, sir." "Bring her." The next day, Ruth went to the hotel with fear in her chest. Mr. Adams smiled kindly and listened as she explained her dream. He asked, "How much would it cost you to start properly?" Ruth shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe 500,000, even 100,000 can help." He leaned back, then opened his drawer. He brought out a check. Ruth looked down. 5 million naira. She screamed. "Sir, I can't take this." "Yes, you can, and you will. This is not a gift. This is a seed." He stood up. "Grow it." 3 months after Ruth left, Daniel didn't care. He even threw a party. He told his friends, "Finally, I'm free. That girl was a burden." Enter Betty. Flashy, bold, daughter of a senator. She had long nails, long lashes, and a long list of men she had used and dumped. Daniel met her at a club. She wore a red gown that made all eyes turn, but she only looked at him. "You look rich," she said, smiling. "I am. I like rich men." Daniel grinned. That was all it took. Within days they were inseparable. Betty wasn't like Ruth. She didn't beg. She didn't serve. She gave commands, and Daniel, proud, foolish Daniel, followed. One evening she said, "Baby, there's a deal I want us to do. We'll double your money in 1 month." "What kind of deal?" "Luxury fabrics. We just need 70 million naira to bring it in from Dubai." Daniel's eyes lit up. "I don't have that kind of money now, but maybe I can take a loan." Betty smiled. "Use your house, your land, your car. This deal is solid, trust me." Daniel nodded. He didn't even check. He just trusted, because Betty made him feel like a king. But Betty was a queen of lies. While Daniel was sinking, Ruth was flying. She used the 5 million naira to rent a small shop, buy sewing machines and hire 2 apprentices. Threads of Joy became a brand. Instagram followers grew. Customers came from Ikeja, Lekki, even Abuja. Mr. Adams continued to support her, not just with money, but with wisdom. He told her, "Let your pain become your power. Don't waste it." And Ruth held those words in her heart. Daniel got the loan. He used his house papers, his land papers, even his car documents. He gave everything to Betty. She kissed him and said, "Trust me, baby, in 2 weeks we're cashing out." He smiled, but when 2 weeks passed, Betty was gone. Phone off, no address, no trace, gone. Daniel panicked. He called her friends. No one knew anything. He went to her father's house. The senator said, "I don't know who you're talking about. I have no daughter named Betty." Daniel's hands began to shake. He called the bank. They said, "You have 2 weeks to return the money or your properties will be seized." Daniel sat alone in his empty house, the same house where he slapped Ruth, where he called her maid. Now there was no one, no friends, no drinks, no laughter, just silence and shame. Then one rainy evening he saw Betty at a restaurant with another man. Daniel didn't blink. He walked up to her table. "Where is my money?" She sipped her drink. "Who are you?" "Betty, you ruined me." She laughed. "You ruined yourself. I just helped you see it faster." Daniel pulled out a knife. No one saw it coming, not even Betty. He stabbed her once, twice, 3 times. Blood everywhere, people screaming. Daniel stood there, covered in red, the knife in his hand. He didn't run. He didn't speak. He just stood and smiled. The trial was quick. There were witnesses, videos, proof. The judge looked at Daniel and said, "You gave up everything, your wife, your soul, for pride, and now you'll live with the ashes of your choices. Life imprisonment." Daniel laughed, but it was a broken laugh, a laugh full of tears, because deep inside he knew. He didn't just lose a woman, he lost himself. Ruth was in her shop when Joel came in with his phone. "You need to see this." It was all over the news. Businessman Daniel Okoro, sentenced to life in prison for murder of socialite Betty Bello. Ruth dropped her scissors. She sat down. She didn't speak for a while. Then she whispered, "He's gone." Joel nodded. "He did this to himself." Ruth closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time she prayed, "Thank you, God, for pulling me out before the fire came." 2 months had passed since Daniel's name disappeared from the newspapers. Ruth focused on work. Her boutique, Threads of Joy, was now the talk of the town. She dressed brides, birthday girls, businesswomen and students. Her apprentices grew into confident tailors. Even small celebrities started wearing her designs. She didn't post sad quotes online. She didn't show off her pain. She just smiled, sewed, and grew. But in her quiet moments, she still wondered, will I ever love again? One afternoon, Ruth was fitting a client when Joel entered the shop. "Sis," he said, "someone wants to see you." "I'm busy. It's Mr. Adams." Ruth paused. She hadn't seen him in weeks. She wiped her hands and stepped out. There he was, in a clean blue shirt, holding a wrapped box. "I hope I'm not disturbing your empire," he said with a small smile. Ruth laughed softly. "Not at all." He handed her the box. "A small gift. Open it later." Then he added, "You once told me you sew with pain. I want you to start sewing with joy." That night, Ruth opened the box. Inside was a set of custom-made golden scissors. On the blade it was written, "To Ruth, the hands that mend hearts. Adams." She covered her mouth. Tears fell, not because she was sad, but because someone finally saw her. The next week, Mr. Adams invited her and Joel to lunch. It was nothing fancy, just rice and chicken in his house, but the way he pulled out her chair, the way he listened when she spoke, the way he laughed when Joel told jokes, it wasn't romance, it was respect. And that was something Ruth hadn't tasted in years. After lunch, Joel stepped outside to take a call. Mr. Adams turned to Ruth. I lost my wife 10 years ago. Cancer. Since then, I've been building my business. No time for games, no room for lies. He paused. But Ruth, your strength, your grace, I see it. Ruth looked down. I don't want a man who feels sorry for me. I don't. I feel proud of you. I don't want pity. You won't get it. Just partnership. She blinked, then whispered, I don't know if I can love again. He nodded. Then, let's just be friends, no rush, just real. From that day, Mr. Adams came by the shop once a week. He never rushed her, never crossed the line. He would bring coffee, or books, or just sit and listen. And slowly, very slowly, Ruth began to smile wider, laugh louder, trust again. At the same time, Joel's life also changed. He graduated with top honors, got a job in a tech firm, and on his first payday, he brought Ruth a gift, a simple wristwatch. Because you gave me time when no one else did. Ruth hugged him tight. You're my treasure, Joel, my only light when the world went dark, he whispered. And now it's your time to shine. One evening, Mr. Adams said, Ruth, I don't need a big wedding. I just want peace. Would you walk beside me, not behind me, for the rest of our lives? She didn't answer for a moment. Then she smiled. Yes, but she added, no white dress, no long veil, no crown. What do you want? A simple traditional wedding. Just joy, just family. The sun was bright that morning, not harsh, just soft and golden, like heaven was smiling. Ruth stood in front of a mirror wearing a simple red and white wrapper, her hair tied in a bun, her face glowing without too much makeup. Joel stood behind her, adjusting her necklace. You look like Mama, he said softly. She touched his hand. I wish she was here. She is. She's in this room. In your strength. In our smiles. Tears gathered in her eyes. But this time they were not tears of pain. They were tears of joy. The compound was small, filled with palm fronds, chairs, and the sweet smell of jollof rice. No big crowd, just the right people. Mr. Adams wore a clean white agbada. He didn't smile too wide. He just looked peaceful. Like a man who had waited long enough and finally found what was his. There were no bodyguards, no fake pastors, no loud DJ, just drums, family, and love. Joel stood beside Ruth as her brother and father figure. When the elders called her out to meet the groom, she walked with grace, not fear. No one whispered about her dress. No one judged her background. No one looked at her with pity, because everyone knew this woman had walked through fire and came out gold. There were no long speeches, no scripts. Mr. Adams held her hand and said, You don't belong to me. You belong to yourself. But if you'll walk beside me, I'll never stop clapping for you, Ruth smiled. You don't complete me. I was already whole. But I'll share my wholeness with you, because now I have joy to give. The crowd clapped. Joel cried silently. It was a wedding, but it felt like a rebirth. Somewhere in a hospital bed far away, Mama Doris lay still. News of Daniel's sentence had broken her. High blood pressure, heart failure, the doctors tried, but the guilt crushed her more than sickness. In her final days, she whispered, That girl, I should have listened. But it was too late. She died quietly, No one came to the burial. Even the servants didn't shed a tear. Daniel sat in a cold cell. His beard was rough, his eyes empty. He heard about Ruth's boutique on the radio one day. Someone mentioned Threads of Joy. He knew the name. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in his life he whispered, "I had a diamond and I crushed it. But regret is not a key. It doesn't open any doors." Daniel remained where he belonged, behind bars. Ruth's boutique expanded into a fashion school. She trained young girls, especially those who had been hurt, girls from broken homes, girls who had lost hope. And she told them all the same thing. Don't wait for someone to pick you. Choose yourself. Years later, Joel stood at his company's award ceremony. He was now a senior software engineer, respected across the industry. He gave a short speech. "Everything I am is because one woman never gave up on me. My sister, Ruth. She gave me food, protection, and her last strength, even when she had none." The crowd clapped. Some cried. Ruth watched from the front row, holding Mr. Adams' hand. And in that moment, everything made sense. She had walked into her first wedding, trembling, and walked into her second one, dancing. She had once been called a servant, but now she was a queen. And the girl who once cried at the altar was now the woman helping others rise. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed. Till next time.